Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here at the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters. Got John Hendrickson and myself here again today, ready to thrill and excite you on the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. John's got trivia questions. He's got some Hoover literature and is been waiting all week for an opportunity to get back behind the mic. So he's excited. And look, I can tell he's already getting the memo on being more emotive, more energetic, and it's really encouraging to see. You continue to grow into the role, John.
Go
ahead.
I was just noticing all the construction equipment in here with the big ladder, and so there must be some renovations going to be going on in the studio.
We haven't had construction updates for a while, but John, you're absolutely right, and we should come back to that. So a construction update is there actually is a step ladder that's set up right behind one of the lights in here, and yours truly has been up digging around up above the ceiling, the drop ceiling in here. We're going to be hanging some different curtains and making some improvements. Really, you know what the timeline is for all this, right?
No.
As soon as I get around to it, it's the timeline, John. So I keep teasing out all these big changes to the studio, and yet they never come. It's again like I keep planning to record the podcast, and here we are on late Friday morning, and we're getting around to it. So it's good. But thank you for the reminder, John. Okay, we're gonna switch things up a little bit this week, and here at the outset, for those of you that don't listen to all 30 plus minutes of the podcast, we have started a regular feature, which is the trivia.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. The Hendrickson Trivia. And this is one of the flagship offerings of the Hendrickson Library here at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization. And so we're going to move this up to the front end to see if we get any takers. Now, so far, the only person who has correctly answered one of the trivia questions continues to be State Representative Bill Gustav.
That's right.
Who did not get the last one, although I think was in the ballpark.
Yes, yeah.
So anyway, one of you out there, one of the 12 of you, we're again going to challenge you to see if you can't get one of these trivia questions. So here is John. Take it away.
Yeah. So here's the quote. By the way, the answer from last week was the quote was from Andrew Mellon, Secretary of the Treasury. But here's the quote for this week. It has to do with one of my favorite pastimes. Fishing is a chance to wash one's soul with pure air, with the rush of the brook, or with the shimmer of the sun on the blue water. It brings meekness and inspiration from the scenery of nature, charity toward tackle makers, patience toward fish, a mockery of prophets and egos, a quieting of hate, a rejoicing that you do not have to decide a darn thing until next week, and it is discipline in the equality of man, for all men are equal before fish.
All right.
Who said that, folks?
Who said that? We'll see. So we need to get more uptake on the trivia here. So, and you know what? You challenged me, John. I think I'm going to bring one of these weeks.
Yes.
Mine won't be nearly. Mine will probably be easier to guess just because I don't have the detailed files that you do. But we will. I'll have to challenge myself on that. All right. So what we're going to try and accomplish today, John, is just a quick recap. So I think it was on Wednesday afternoon this week, the governor took final action on the 2025 legislative session. And so the governor has 30 days following the end of the legislative session to decide whether to sign or veto the remainder of the bills. And so you've been seeing them sort of leak out. I don't want to say leak out, but just as they continue to review things. And they do. They honestly spend quite a bit of time looking over what actually happened in these bills and whether she decides to sign them or not. Well, here with the last action of the year was quite a long list of bills, if memory serves, but the state budget is all in there. The bulk of it, all the big budget bills are in there. The two highest profile pieces of legislation that were in there were the bill that was dealt with use of eminent domain on the carbon capture pipeline. And if you follow the news, you've seen quite a bit of that. And the legislation that was changes the rules around pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, which really is a pretty substantial, consequential bill itself. You think that's a fair summation of all that? There's a couple other pieces in there.
Yes,
There's always something, as I've said, there's always a constituency for everything in that building.
Yeah,
so I don't want to, if you had your favorite bill that never made it into the media, I apologize. I just didn't read up on your bill. But that's what I saw there. So, but one of those bills that there was a constituency for that maybe not everybody paid attention to was the creation of the Center for Intellectual Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And where is it housed?
This will be at the University of Iowa.
University of Iowa.
Iowa City.
So tell us about the Center for Intellectual Freedom, John.
So this will be a center.
Is it going to be for intellectual freedom?
Yes,
it's a center and it's for intellectual freedom. Okay, good.
Yep. And it'll be focused on civic education and primarily for the teaching of the American founding and constitutional principles. And this is an effort that passed the legislature thankfully, this was the effort of Representative Taylor Collins, who has really spearheaded this
friend
effort.
Of the program, friend of the organization.
Yeah. And so there's been as our listeners probably know, just for decades, such a left-wing, not only bias, but domination on campuses. Mm-hmm. And so what this is to bring some balance and fairness and even an awareness of constitutional principles to college students. And so I think this is definitely something that's needed. I've spent a considerable time in the classroom myself teaching undergraduates, and there's a lot of civic ignorance out there.
No, John, you are a humble man, but you are undoubtedly one of Iowa's leading scholars on the matter of civics education and intellectual freedom, and you have every right to be excited about the creation of this center. And I know, and I've said this before, hopefully there's a role that you can play in helping to craft where they're going, because I think you have a lot to offer in that. So I was excited to see it too, and I think it's a great great thing.
I think I remember was a few years ago. Was it during the 2016 when you were invited? Was it to the law school and had that debate? It was about the future of the Republican Party.
Oh, that was probably in 21, 20, somewhere in there,
But, I mean, we need more of that, where we have that free exchange of ideas and debates on both sides.
That was great. I really enjoyed doing that. That was pre-podcast.
That's right,
that we did that. But there was folks on, across the political spectrum. You had electeds. I think there were 4 or 5 of us in there, and I really enjoyed that. It was at the old Capitol in the historic Senate chamber. So it was a really neat event that the university put together, and I have always enjoyed doing those kinds of things. Okay, so I didn't notice anything, John. I know last episode we talked a little bit about the state budget, and you and Tom Sands actually released the article that we had discussed on that. I don't think there's a lot left to add to the state budget. Is there any other thoughts after having seen this? I didn't see any huge line item vetoes. I think there was a couple, one or two.
One or two that were, one had to do with the University of Northern Iowa. But there's, I think pretty much the budget was signed as is. So then I want to touch a little bit, and this is tricky for us because it's not one of our issues here at ITR, but it is important. It certainly has been important politically, which is the legislation around the protection of eminent domain in the construction of a carbon capture pipeline. Did I say that fairly? Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And we're going to bring it up because it is important politically, and we don't just limit ourselves to tax policy here on the podcast. And so you may have to help me out a little bit on this, but essentially there was a bill for years that landowners and their friends have, and an interesting coalition, some environmental folks on the far left with some of these other landowners to try and stop or limit the use of eminent domain to construct this carbon capture pipeline, which is essentially shipping out CO2 emissions from ethanol plants. Is that
Yes,
essentially
yeah,
what we're talking
yep,
about here?
yep.
Okay. Because it is one of the uses of eminent domain is pipelines.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but where are the boundaries on that? And I think that's been the issue is, if it's a natural gas pipeline for a community in Iowa, we've pretty well accepted that that's going to be a use for eminent domain. However, that's really not quite what's going on here. This is shipping CO2, I think, out of state, maybe into the Dakotas. I can't remember. Yeah, I think that's what we're doing. Anyway, I've purposely not become an expert on this bill.
Yeah.
I've long been a defender of eminent domain, and so or defender of private property rights inside of that. And I think some of the folks that have been working on this bill would attest to that. However, I mean, there's certainly a lot of money at stake here, and that shouldn't always be directly dismissed, even though we are talking about a fundamental constitutional right. I'm kind of going on and on, though, but you've seen some of this fallout. I mean, this has been flooding the Capitol. There's a lot of passions on this issue.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's spilling into the primary for governor's race.
Absolutely.
And I saw that this morning. Some of the candidates taking positions on this already. But no, I think you staked out the issue pretty well on both sides, and there's passionate voices on both sides, and it's not just here, but we see this debate in South Dakota, I believe North Dakota as well, and this eminent domain and property rights have always been sort of a tricky issue, and Republicans have usually fallen on the side of property rights on that because it's a fundamental constitutional issue, and property rights are key, they're foundational. But I think there's and I have to confess I did not read the bill because.
No, there are no demerits issued for not reading the pipeline.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I have looked at it.
So I don't know the mechanics of it, or there's the argument was made that this bill would have hurt Iowa's economy. So I don't know if that was valid or not. I can't speak to those issues, but I want to. One thing I was thinking of this morning was, I noticed when I was watching Channel 8 that the leader of the Senate Democrats.
No, I can't have it.
Yeah.
I used to have the jingle.
Yeah.
Instead, I've got.
But maybe it is wrong watching that.
I don't know. Anyway.
But the leader of the Senate Democrats was quoted of basically criticizing the veto.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so I couldn't help but wonder is, because of the anger, will this impact the election for governor, depending on who the Democratic nominee will be? If they take a position on this issue that's in favor of the landowners, and would there be people that would jettison the party and vote for someone like Rob Sand? I mean, I couldn't help but think that.
Well, I don't know if
don't.
Auditor Sand's taken a position on this at all.
Yeah.
Maybe he has, but I guess if I was advising him, I'd tell him to stay out of it for a while.
Yeah.
I think you make a good point there, John, and I want to come back to that. So a couple of thoughts before we get into some of the forward-looking 2026 things is that the immediate thing is you've seen several people in the Iowa House who authored this bill and set it forward, calling for a special session to either override the governor's veto or to pass a new bill that met some of the failings of the bill. I mean, the governor in her veto letter, if I understand, I read it. I didn't read it today before the show, but essentially said she is also a supporter of private property rights, but thinks that this bill went too far or was needed to be changed. Okay, fine. Like I said, we're not experts on the bill. There are some pieces in there I can understand why, there was an eyebrow raised to, because there, when you start talking about insurance coverage or legal standing, those aren't directly into the issue of eminent domain singularly, but. So that's been out there. But then you saw Senate Majority Leader Jack Whitfer issue a statement that he doesn't believe that there is the support on the Senate side to call for a special session. So it would appear that there will not be a special session if something were to change. It takes a 2/3 vote in both chambers for the legislature to call a special session. So I doesn't look like we're going to see that, which then means for the proponents of this bill, what's next? And it would look to be whenever the legislature convenes again, looks to me like that's going to be in January of 2026. What's the plan?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where there's been a lot of, I can't say ink spilled, I guess pixels spilled in social media and in the traditional media of, there's a lot of anger on the landowners, their allies, and legislators themselves that are really taking to social media to criticize the governor and to criticize the Senate. And I can understand the frustration and the anger, absolutely. But what is the plan for 2026? If the goal is to make some law on this and to protect, I just don't know how the public feud gets you any closer to that solution. But at the same time, I'm trying to see both sides of this because I'm not taking the position. At the same time, 3 years of working within the system hasn't gotten them the result they wanted. But there's a lot of finger pointing going on out there, and I guess if you're really trying to fix the problem, maybe we need to turn the volume down just a little bit.
Yeah.
That's my thought on the subject. But when you're talking about a core fundamental constitutional right, whether it's freedom of speech or any of people have very passionate beliefs on that, and that is absolutely appropriate at the same time.
I think you're right on that. And the other thing I can't help but think about, and you've addressed this before on the program and even at tax day, but the correlation between this issue and property taxes. And everyone is always upset about property taxes, but you just don't see the outrage over nothing getting done on property taxes, but you see the outrage on this.
Right.
And I know I can understand the frustrations on both issues, but I have a trouble wondering why people aren't more concerned about the issue on property taxes, about nothing getting done. I mean, I
wonder if it's because it's incremental.
Yes, yeah.
But when you have over 1.5% of the value of your home that you have to remit to the government for the privilege of living in your own home every year, at what level does that need to rise to before the property taxes are a taking, just like putting a pipeline through one section of your land is a taking? You're still left with the remainder if there's a pipeline under the ground, and I get the other risks. But if they're taking 1.5% of the value of your home every year, then that's one that we all have to pay, not just a landowner out in rural Iowa. So I'd like to see more outrage over what's going on with property taxes in this state. And I think folks get that. I've talked with a lot of legislators since session ended, and they all are hungry for, at least the ones I talked to, maybe that's not a representative sample of legislators, the ones that are calling me, but they want solutions on that too. They get it, but we have got to continue to message this and help and make sure that Iowans not only understand the problem, because I think they do. They express through public opinion polls and their response to the message we put out. They understand, but it has to translate to political energy.
Yes, yeah.
To fix the problem next year. So we're going to continue to do that. I do want to touch on this other piece, though, because you talked about the governor's race and the politics of this. And here's something that I don't know and I don't have data on, and I suspect that many of the people that are speaking on this issue don't have this information either. There's really deep passion on this issue, but I don't know how broad that passion is. If you are an affected landowner or you are passionate about private property rights, this will impact your vote. If you're a Republican, you're going to be looking for a Republican candidate that you see as a champion on this issue. I know we've seen Representative Eddie Andrews really trying to get out in front of this. Great. But how many voters does that move? How many voters, either in a Republican primary or in a general election, will cast their vote based on this issue? There are some, absolutely. and we've seen that. But how broad is it? I know that the issue of property taxes may not have people flooding the Capitol, but I know that it moves a lot of voters because we got data that is shown it year after year. And I'm not trying to elevate one over the other, but I think as you just said, just because the folks that care aren't as vocal, don't take that to mean that the issue isn't as important to a broad section of Iowans. And so this is my guess. You will see this talked about in a Republican primary because it's a smaller universe of voters, but I don't think it'll be an issue in the general election, at least in terms of what you see in the TV and the mail and what's going on there. But I'm saying this and I'm admitting my ignorance that it might be broader than I think. And if it is, great. I mean, that means that people are paying attention, and I'm not wishing that it were one or the other. But I know that property taxes is important. It's on the minds of voters. So,
I would agree, and I think it's still early, and there's going to be candidates entering the race probably on both sides. But I would predict that property taxes will be the central issue of this campaign.
Yes, it will. I think issues of the economy will continue to be there. Certainly, Democrats are just going to try and run the Donald Trump is bad and dangerous campaign because they're so invested in it. But the other one, John, and I'm just guessing at it. I wonder if immigration again is an issue in a general election campaign.
Yes, yeah.
Just because it's top of mind to a lot of people. So, but in the absence of hard data, let's assume that kitchen table issues, family budget issues will be important because they always have been. And I think that's a very fair guess. Does it impact me and my family? Will always be, and especially if, depends on where the economy's at too. In more challenging economic times, people care much more about their own family budget. So a couple other quick things. John, the pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, they're a bill this year that really was hotly contested. You didn't see as much of it in the media as you saw maybe on the pipeline, but this was pharmacists, especially rural pharmacies, trying to carve out space for themselves in consolidation in the pharmacy industry and rates that are paid for filling prescriptions. And this bill was to try and bring some balance, try to protect the rural pharmacies. You had, I think, a lot of rural legislators on one side. And if I'm wrong on this, John, because again, I didn't follow it this year. And on the other side is a lot of the business and industry groups that were worried about the cost. I mean, they're worried about their cost and their prescription benefit. And anyway, so this bill, essentially the pharmacies won out on this. Is that a fair summation of it?
Yes, and I have to, I'm embarrassed to say this is another issue that I don't understand either because it's one I just haven't had the time to dig into.
Well, it's likely not going to be covered at the Center for Intellectual Freedom.
Yes, yeah.
But it's still important, especially
if
you're in a small town that's trying to save your rural pharmacy. Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that bill got signed, and that at least as the intent of the bill will provide a fixed rate. I don't know what the industry term is, a fill rate for how much that pharmacy gets paid to fill the prescription. And the intent is to protect some of these rural small town pharmacies. And I get it if you are from one of those towns and you're trying to protect that. Although at the same time, we're all more and more doing mail order. It's probably sidestepping a lot of those rural pharmacies anyway. But it's not my industry. But cost of health care is also important. And I can understand where the folks on their side of the issue are coming from as well. And look, issues around PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, those have been around for 10 years in the legislature. They have gotten huge. But anyway, that bill got signed. And then one last thing, John, that we're going to close on. Something that was a top priority of mine my entire time in the legislature that I never was able to get any movement on at all. Actually became law and is going to happen here in the year of our Lord 2025 is we are finally going to raise the Wallace Building.
Oh, yes, yeah. You've talked about this. Yes, yeah.
And for those of you, I think a lot of you, even in central Iowa, don't know the name of the building, but you've all seen it, is the building that's on the Capitol complex with the gold windows, the gold mirrors on the front of it, that at one point would be in the marketing materials for the city of Des Moines or whatever. It is an awful structure. It was poorly designed. It has been a money pit from day one. It is objectively an occupational health hazard. It's housed a lot of different state departments in it. I think one of the last major tenants is the Department of Agriculture, and it has to go. I read in the article in the Register, though, that renovating that building, just renovating it to bring it up to passable standards, was going to be $85 million. So what the state did was authorize the purchase of an additional building kind of over on the south side towards the airport. And it's the address is 6200 Park. I think that is part of or adjacent to the building that the Department of Economic Development is in down there on the corner of Park and Fleur on the south side. It's a nice kind of campus area. But anyway, so they're going to have that office building off of the state capitol grounds for a fraction of the cost of even fixing that. I think that's good business. If they do need the space, I mean, my first choice would be shrink state government and make them all fit in the buildings we still have. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah. But I believe that that's going to be good business, and you will see that building being torn down soon. Anyway, the value of the vacant land is more than the cost to tear it down. It's valuable property, and I'm really excited that we finally get to tear down that ugly wall.
Yes, yeah, you've been talking about that for a long time.
Are you excited?
I am. Yeah.
Are you excited for me?
Yes. Yeah.
Which one?
Both.
Oh, okay, good.
But I hope whatever goes up there is will be something better.
Okay.
And I think we should do either a podcast or a segment on the importance of architecture, because you have some really good thoughts.
Let's do it,
Because I never appreciated that till you started talking about it.
Yes.
And why that's important.
Modern architecture, brutalist architecture, these giant concrete bunkers that have been built is part of, dehumanizing society, and we will do that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's plan that ahead, and let's see if we can find maybe even someone that we can interview on it.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really good. So the wall is built. So I have one last pet project. I think there's one up. I may remember that at these other pet projects I never got done. There's one left. And so here we did the trivia on the front end. So here's my challenge to legislators. And I have actually mentioned this. I'm not gonna spoil who actually likes the idea and may run with it someday. But here's the challenge. The other one I never got done. Public buildings at any level in this state that are funded by tax dollars should not be named after political figures. You shouldn't name the building or the park or the community center or whatever after a still living political figure. It's far too self-serving. You can do it posthumously, or you can do it if that person wants to pay for a substantial part of the building, but we should not be doing that in this state. That's not why we build buildings in Iowa. So, are you with me?
I am, yes. I
okay,
agree.
good.
Yep,
Anyway, that's the other freebie for any legislator that wants to take the Chris Hagenow pet project and run with it. There it is. So, John, you got anything else for us today?
I don't actually.
Wait, what?
Yeah, this is a first.
You don't have anything else for us?
No.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, we're going to end up wrapping up on time then. All right. Well, that is a wrap not only in this podcast session, but that is a wrap on the 2025 regular legislative session, we think. And so thank you for being a part of it all. We're going to continue to be with you throughout the summer and the fall as we continue to boost the momentum, hopefully, behind property tax reform, fiscal discipline, and all the other issues that we enjoy talking about. So, we're looking forward to it. And one of these days, maybe over the summer, we can get around to the studio upgrades, John.
Yes, yeah.
I know you're looking forward to it. All right. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. And with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.